Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How you doing this Thursday evening?
I'm doing fine, and then you made me watch a 5-minute deleted scene from the Batman.
Yeah, I know. I know you just were like, well, I saw the stills, but I was like, yeah, but stills don't give you anything other than the prosthetics job that they did on Barry Keoghan.
Yeah. I was looking at the comments during most of that. I was just curious about what people were saying about it.
Yeah.
Other than the scene itself. Because, I mean, the post-credit scene, it wasn't a post-credit scene. A lot of people debate if it should have been a post-credit scene.
Right.
But the scene where they show the Joker was one of the more relevant, debatable topics coming out of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so now getting a 5-minute cut piece, you can see both why they shot it, and you can also see why it was left on the table on the cutting room floor.
I watching it. So my gut reaction, honestly, when I watched the deleted scene the first time, was I kind of wish they had kept it in. But now as you were listening to it and while we were watching it, right before we recorded this, I'm back on the fence on like, okay, I see why they may have cut it out.
And what I saw a lot in the comments as I was watching the clip was that, and it was a valid point, is that by including that, you not only introduce a more relevant, familiar face,
mm-hmm.
but also the conversation itself, and the especially whenever it related to the Riddler, kind of minimized that role and that villain.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have made the rest of that would have taken you not out of the movie, but it would have changed how you viewed the Riddler going forward.
Yeah, it definitely would have done so, and I think undermined the scene where Batman does confront the Riddler in Arkham.
Undermine a lot of like any scene going forward, because you've already introduced a bigger, more prominent figure to kind of overshadow him. So in your mind, you're like, well, we know how this is going to end. Who cares about the Riddler? And I mean, the Joker's more terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is more terrifying for sure. And I mean, and I think also if you had included the deleted scene, then you definitely would have had to have cut the scene with Riddler and the Joker at the end, because the more that obviously the Joker is clearly more menacing, and it would, his ramblings and stuff at the end just wouldn't have the same weight. And I get at it, but I mean, what I said earlier with my gut reaction with it, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I like, it goes back to what I talked about during our review of the film, as far as just liking a detective story, Batman, and I guess I was leaning into that criminal profiling aspect that he was doing. Like, well, if you're going to try to take out a psycho killer, then let me go talk to a psycho killer. And I guess it's very Silence of the Lamb-esque.
Well, it would have been better had we not watched the most recent season of Titans, which did that very exact thing.
Yep.
with another character who didn't start out as being Joker, and then by the end of the season, that's the angle that they took. I don't know, but
yeah. But you're right. That's a very good point. I didn't think about that until you erased it. But that's an excellent point. We did, and I guess that's the thing about the Bat universe, and I guess it's a good segue to the whole, with Harvey Dent being cast with Misha Collins from Supernatural on Gotham Knights. Are we getting to the place where we're getting saturated by the Batverse?
So yes, but I actually love this casting because I love Misha Collins. He's the only reason why I got into Supernatural and stayed around for, I don't know, a fair amount of it before never returning to it again. But I am just happy for him, and I think that he actually can pull this off. And it's funny because Two-Face, honestly, it's a known character. It's a known character, and we've seen him a few times, but not like this repeated, let's also have him in his own standalone movie that's Oscar worthy, you know? Like it's not going towards the Joker route. So I'm okay with this, especially because the rogue gallery that Batman has, you have a lot of very well-known characters, and only a few of them, though, don't really, you're able to still make a well-grounded show and not go super meta-human with it.
Yeah.
And make it believable. So I think that's kind of why we're seeing these same names. But I think that DC as a whole, in a way, and we might even get into this later, I don't know, depends on how my mind works tonight, but I think just the genre itself, it's kind of, everything is starting to collide and come together, and you're just like, okay, I feel like I've seen this episode 5 times this week.
Yeah. yeah. That's true. But I agree with you that I think he could play the character of Harvey Dent very, very well. And you know, of course, this is just a pilot, assuming that this will get picked up to series. So it may not, but at least it sounds like initially we're going to just get the Dent character before he becomes Two-Face that we're familiar with in other iterations in live action, from the Dark Knight, even the even one of the Joel Schumacher ones, was it Batman Forever? I think, was it that one that he was in? I can't remember.
So. I don't know. Yeah. The names all, like, it's the one with Val Kilmer. That's what we call it. The one with Val. Yeah. Like, going through Batman movies, you're like, okay, who was Batman? Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the one with Val Kilmer and the one with Tommy Lee Jones, where
and Jim
Carrey was the Riddler. Yeah, I think the thing that stands about with that one is like when the story about Tommy Lee Jones encounters Jim Carrey in a restaurant, and he just like, I can't stand for your foolery, or something to that effect.
Yeah. Speaking about foolery, so we have a casting news update for not a DC show, but for actually the Mandalorian season 3, as Christopher Lloyd will be a guest star during that season. Too bad there's this cute little adorable baby Yoda who's just going to steal every scene in that show. So I'm happy for Christopher Lloyd and to see him in this universe, but dude, you're gonna get upstaged real quick.
yeah, it's probably a guest shot, sort of, but he's hit the trifecta now, because he's obviously Back to the Future. Mm-hmm. He was Star Trek 3. He was Krug, the Klingon who was the antagonist in that film, and now he's in Star Wars. So I mean, he's all over the genre.
Yeah, if only he could jump over to Marvel,
Yeah, hey, but it's possible.
It is. Notice I did not say DC. I just, DC, it's a love-hate relationship, because they give us a lot of content, but sometimes that content just wears on you. Speaking about wearing, CW has renewed Superman and Lois and The Flash, but we still don't have word on Batwoman or Naomi.
Yeah, and also Stargirl, but Stargirl doesn't surprise me because, well, one, the 3rd season hasn't even aired yet, so we don't. So I think they'll probably see how it does in the ratings, and also depends on what happens with the network itself with the pending sale. So, that one I'm not too worried about. But it's very interesting with Batwoman, especially thinking about our conversation with Gotham Knights, whether or not they'll do the renewal. Maybe they're really looking hard at the numbers and stuff. And I know the upfronts are going to be in May, so maybe we'll get news by then. But the longer it goes, the more likely it'll either be one of two things. They'll just cancel it outright, or they'll do we'll give you a season 4, but this is the 4th and final season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did end it in a way where you could go back. You don't have to go back.
Yeah.
We've seen a flash forward, if you will, and we know what happens to Ryan and Sophie. So
yeah.
What's left? I guess my point is, what is there left for them to tell?
Yeah.
What story is there that they need to tell? It's unfortunate just how the show started, the in between what happened between the first and second season, and then to come back with the second and third season, and just all of a sudden the writing goes down and the performances are there. We've never really knocked too hard on those, but it's just I don't know. It's an interesting show from the perspective of just how the production occurred and everything that happened.
Yeah, I agree. The performances have been great. The stories have been, I guess the thing about this show is when they nail it, they really nail it, and we've been very complimentary of that. But then other parts where it just feels derivative, and and like we were just talking earlier this evening, the bat saturation. It just feels derivative of other things we've seen in the Batverse. So, so I know ratings wise this year it's continued to struggle as far as even for the CW. So, like I said earlier, I think we'll have one of those two options with that show, and I don't see it going over to HBO Max for new life either. I mean, if it gets axed to the CW, it's not going to just show up there as far as new episodes.
Right.
I mean, obviously right now, all the prior season shows, go there after they're done, but I can't see it being picked up on HBO Max unless they completely retool the show and reintroduce the character in some other format.
Right. And I'm not surprised about Naomi either.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a secret that I've kind of struggled with this show. And this week's episode didn't do anything for me. Again, it felt so much like one of those episodes where, like a filler. It felt so much like a filler episode, just because usually it's the B plot that I always just want to throw away with Naomi, because usually it revolves around the Scooby Gang, and this episode is no different. But even the A plot wasn't really compelling. And then you had this feud going on between Dee and Zimbabwe, and it's just, I don't know, it was a lot of talk. Yeah. So essentially I think that this show, the way it's being written and way it's being produced, I feel like it's 10 years too late. Honestly, there's something about it that gives me very early 2000 vibes. Especially with some of the content that was on the CW at the time, or the WB, what have you. This is I'm blanking on the name of that show about the aliens who come to Earth and are teenagers, but and they just did if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, whatever. So something important.
Yeah, actually this week episode actually worked for me. So I was like, for once, I was like, okay, they are finally going somewhere, and I feel like they even the story with Annabelle's boyfriend and Naomi, and the other people coming in, another member coming into the secret and finding out who she is. As long as they don't go the route of the Flash, for like by the time we're done, everyone, of course,
they will. All of us could be. This is the first step in that direction.
As long as Hollis Portland-Suego doesn't notice she has powers, I'm good. But you're right. Well, the Scooby Gang given that they're going the whole like Fellowship of the Rings and the whole Lord of the Rings. I mean, they've been dropping those hints all season, but obviously it was clearly on the nose with this particular episode. And I think maybe that's the whole purpose of the Scooby Gang at this point is this is Naomi, Naomi's Frodo, and Annabelle is Sam, and then everyone else, fill in the gap for the various members of the Fellowship. And maybe that was, and I guess, so we saw that, and I love how everybody in the story this week was like, I hate Lord of the Rings. I hate Lord of the Rings, even though I guess his name's Justin, was like, that's my favorite book, but my favorite movie. But I like that little aspect of it. And I think, and I guess that was sort of how they are, what the purpose, because that's another thing I know we've been struggling with this show is what's the purpose of the Scooby Gang? And I think they're just there as they truly are there as a support system for Naomi, and especially the way this episode ended with them tracking another alien in the house, and and I think they are going to pull in that Naomi's dad is from Rand.
Yeah. That as soon as they did that, I was like, okay, dad is from Rand. Got it.
Yeah. I think they are going to go.
Mystery.
Yeah, I think I was wondering if they were going to do it, and they did. I think they are, and so I was like, okay, got a little bit of payoff here, and then the whole Zambadu and Dee showdown, and they're back and forth. I mean, I think they're going to hold off. They're going to make Zambadu the I guess the frenemy this season, and Brutus is obviously the thing that they're going to go for as far as who they're going to be fighting. But it's just around. But at the end of the day, Zambadu is an enemy, and that'll be, if they do get a second season, they will play that out some, or we may even get it towards the end of this season where we have the betrayal and
we're definitely having a betrayal by the end of this season.
Yeah. So, and Dee will be like, see, this is why we was always suspicious of him, and why he was trying to keep Naomi away from him. So, but like I said, I think this week's episode definitely, I enjoyed it, and they're going in the right direction. But unless they really unless Ava really just leans heavy on CW, I could easily see how the show could get canceled after one season. And it was, it's an endearing show, but I don't know if it has the chops to last for more than a couple seasons. If it continues, if it has the same type of arc that this season's had.
Yep. Agreed. You liked it. I didn't like it. Yeah. Neither one of us would cry if it got canceled.
Yeah.
Oh man. How about we go over and talk some more aliens, as the most recent episode of Picard dropped this week, and we've both watched it. Essentially, this episode, again, to me, it felt like another filler episode. I don't know what it is about this week. Like, that's my theme. I just feel like a lot of the shows we're doing, let's fill in the gaps and move things forward. Not a bad episode of Picard, but I preferred last week's more than this week's. Mm-hmm. I I think that maybe it also could have been there. There was a lot of Agnes and the Boar Queen. I guess I just wanted a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
But who voices the Boar Queen? Do you know?
This is, I think, the third or fourth actress who has portrayed the Boar Queen. So I think I can't remember her name right off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but
it sounds so familiar.
Yeah, but because I know in Star Trek First Contact, Alice Krige played her, and then Susanna Thompson played the Boar Queen in Voyager. But I can't remember the actress's name right off the top of my head. I think her name's Alice. I just can't remember her last name.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But. So essentially, Agnes got left behind while Picard went to look for the Watcher, which, talking about melding of universes.
Yeah.
How many of these shows have Watchers? And then Agnes finds that she needs help with the ship again, and the Borg Queen has some very tough negotiations. But were you surprised when Agnes reneged on her end of that bargain?
No, not yet. I haven't. They haven't. Given the way they turned things last episode, I think Agnes and the Borg Queen are, that their interplay was and is going to be, I think, a focal point for this season. And one of the things that the Borg Queen mentioned to her about being, we're both lonely individuals, and Agnes has echoes of the collective in her now, because so there is going to be a point where the hand's going to be forced where Agnes is going to have to, I don't know if she's going to get fully assimilated, but that she's going to have to follow through with one of the bargains that she's made with the Borg Queen for some purpose.
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially because the Borg Queen's like, "Oh, fool me once, shame on you."
Yeah,
but you're gonna get it again, and that's where I was a little like, maybe you played that too soon, Agnes. Maybe you played it too soon, because you're not out of it yet, and you're gonna need her help again.
Yeah, but I love their interplay, because I think back to last week's episode where the Borg Queen's like, "You've done something that, where she's like, you impress me," and I just love that moment, and to see how again, as I just was talking about, how that's going to sort of unfold this season, where these two characters are just playing chess with one another, and and it's just like, okay, who or poker, and when is one of them going to call the bluff as far as if they're playing a game of poker here, and Agnes or the Borg Agnes is going to have a weak hand at some point, and she's going to have to play it. But yeah, the other thing I liked about this episode, and one of the things I agree with you in some regards, that it was a bit of a filler episode, and for me it felt like filler in the sense that it was a lot of fan service in this episode, and I've seen this all season. I touched on this some when we talked about it last week, but just a lot of homages to Star Trek 4, the one with the whales, for folks who
you have to be careful, Will. The moment you say fan service, you have to say good fan service or bad fan service.
So the Star Trek fan in me, that it was one of those things like, oh, I like this, oh, I like this, I like this, but it reaches a point where I'm like, okay, we get it.
Yep.
So I love the moment, for example, with the moment on the bus, because that was, again, something that was in Star Trek 4, and they twisted it. It's the same actor. It was the punk rocker with the jukebox. So that same character was in San Francisco when the original crew went there to find the humpback whales to save the Earth in the future. And so so they twisted it around this time for this story, and I guess maybe that's why this episode felt filler, and maybe why this is seeming so familiar to me, because structurally this season is really starting to get, the more it unfolds, it's like playing like Star Trek 4.
That's not a good sign.
I
haven't seen it. Maybe I've seen it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, because it's the same kind of themes. Where in Star Trek, because again, Earth is at risk, and always, that's become like that's a staple for Star Trek films, whatever generation it's in, whether it's original series, whether it's Next Generation, etc. Even in the Kelvin universe with Chris Pine's crew, Earth was at risk 2 times, and this. So they used time travel to go back, and instead of them trying to find whales this time, they're trying to find a watcher. And so that's where I think, what maybe filler to you, for me, it's like, I've seen this story before. It's enjoyable, but I feel like it's, what can y'all do to carry, bring something new to me? And I think, so like things like Rios, and his story with ice, and those are the nice elements where I really get engaged with this episode, because it's something different, and it's so Star Trek, where they're talking about a contemporary issue, ice, and how and how immigration is policy is a topical thing, and they show, using these fictional characters, why it's such a shitty thing that's going on. And that's when I was really engaged in this episode, because I'm like, okay, let me see what they talk about this, or seeing the sanctuary districts, because again, they're bringing in something from Deep Space Nine, and talk about poverty, and these sanctuary districts were set up in American cities to put people away, so we didn't have to see them while we had these glamorous towers and stuff. So those are the kind of things that really, that's when Star Trek is like hitting on its full cylinders very well, and those are the things that like stuck out to me with this episode. And then of course how they did the head fake with Guinan.
Yeah, I didn't really follow the head fake, but I was like, oh, Will's gonna explain this, or don't explain it and let me figure it out next week during next week's episode. But I did appreciate watching Seven learn how to drive a car. I am getting a bit tired of this whole, and we've talked about this before, Ralphie's whole depression and anger over what happened to what's his face,
Elnor,
Elnor, and I don't know. I feel like something that's also missing is they're holding back so much with Seven right now. And I'm just like, let her have her moment. I mean, we can play the Eleanor small violin for so many episodes before we need to have like this explosion of like, why is it that she's so happy on this earth? Like, she's the only one, and she's actually playing much more of who we saw Ralphie in the first season. So it's just, I don't know. It's interesting, and I'm kind of curious about why they're holding back. But I also think that I don't know if they did a good job with the pairs. I personally, I understand why it's relevant. Had it maybe been in a different story, it would have worked more. But I didn't like the ice stuff as much, just because I was like, well, they still haven't really explained to me how Rios got so separated from the other two. And they kind of did, but they kind of forced it. And then there's this weird attraction thing going on. And I'm just like, so is he just going to go away and that's not going to be a thing? How can I get emotionally invested in this when he's just going to what? And
Yes.
and I don't know. It just felt kind of like they needed some place to put him.
Yeah.
All the other characters were doing their stuff.
Yeah. Well, and again, I have to go back to Star Trek 4 because this is, gosh, this is like moment here, and I guess if there are other Star Trek fans who've seen, will see the parallels here, because this Rios is very much cast in the role of like Captain Kirk was, with the scientist that Kirk met in the mid '80s whenever they had to go back to St. Wells. The doctor that Rios has met is that kind of same character, and I won't spoil what happens in Star Trek 4 because you probably haven't watched it in a long time, but I'm seeing how I foresee how this could possibly go with this character and her son in this case, and maybe but then again, there's the whole issue of butterflies, so maybe that's where they will diverge from what happened in Star Trek 4, but
something is wrong with Q.
Yeah, something is wrong with Q. Q is stuck. If this is one of Q's arc, structure stories that trying to teach Picard a lesson, and Q's in a little bind here, and I don't know if the Continuum is going to come and rescue him. Because and Picard touched on it earlier in the season too. He's like, something's off with you.
Yeah.
And even though he's an entity, maybe he's not immortal. Maybe something's happened along the way that he is dying, or the continuum is dying. So,
oh God, that sounds familiar. I feel like that has been an episode of The Flash in the house.
That sounds like the Speed Force, right? Yeah.
Which I actually watched The Flash tonight, and it's their best episode this season.
I agree.
40% of it. There's 20% of it that I could care less about. But yeah.
Same. But Q could be like the Speed Force. So there's that aspect. But one last thing I'll just say about the and it's just I'm glad that it took them almost. It took them many years to get to why does Picard have an English accent? They did answer that question in this episode.
Well, Will, I'm so glad that question was answered for you. I know it's like, I don't want to die not knowing why Picard.
I'm sure there are a lot of Redditors who are like, oh, okay, but it has been the discussion of many Trek Twitter and message boards for years. Why does the Picard, he's from France, why has he had this English accent, other than at least there's an inter-universe explanation for why. So I was satisfied with that answer. So
all right, sounds good. Now we're gonna head over to other aliens. This is just a week about aliens, apparently.
It is.
But we're headed over to Smallville, where it's again, these are not bad episodes. I want more. There's something that they're not doing, and a lot of the beats feel very telegraphed. This week's episode of Superman and Lois, we finally get the return of John Henry Irons.
Yep.
And they started off so good with that moment of confusion, which I thought they were going to go and expand on more, but it was much more about Nat, which I didn't mind that either. I thought it was interesting to show what it was like for her to be essentially lost in space.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear. I was surprised because usually when they have flashbacks like that, it kind of ties in to the current story, which it did, but it didn't really. Because she never broke down to anyone talking about that. But you do understand why she's so protective of her father right now, because she almost died trying to find him. And like, that's all that picture, she wanted it back. And she has it, but not really. So it's a lot. I like that. I like that we got to see Jordan in action.
Yeah.
It's a very cool moment between the boys. And I really, I don't know, there was something very cool about that.
Yeah. I mean, just I know. I think I was listening to another podcast review today about this particular episode, and they mentioned Smallville. Got a lot of Smallville vibes from that with Clark. Whenever I guess he was starting to the early stages of utilizing his powers, and sort of the symmetry there with that here in Superman and Lois.
Yeah. I mean, but Smallville is always going to be the comparison. But that's why we don't just have Jordan, we have Jonathan as well. And I liked how, even though Jonathan got his ass kicked, when Jordan swoops in, it's still him at the end of the day who's like telling the guy to back off of his girlfriend and all this stuff.
Yeah. And
then you did go back to that Smallville trope where Jordan has to sacrifice his date with his girlfriend. But I don't know. It's like when the brothers work, this show gets elevated.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this was a very strong Jonathan Jordan episode, and really, for Jonathan, it really it's interesting with Jonathan how he is sort of taking his sort of spin on like Clark's protecting secrets, and so he doesn't hurt his family, in his case his girlfriend, because if Clark were very open about a lot of things, then it would put Lois and others in jeopardy. So so I think he's doing that same, even though it's in a sense that he's just trying to protect his girlfriend from from them losing everything, as far as having to sell these kryptonite to survive. It's still that same kind of that protective instinct that Clark has had with with the people he loves, so that to keep them from any harm. In a weird, in a teenagery way.
Yeah. The stuff with Allie Anderson and Lucy, I never thought she was dead.
No.
And then I did think something was off at the end. I didn't know exactly what, so that did surprise me when she was talking about being the fail-safe, especially to make sure that Allie gets to the other side.
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised that Anderson kind of like took the pendant and was like, "I'm the savior, bitch."
Yep.
But it was very, I guess, here's what I'll say. I am curious in 5 years, if you go back and watch this episode, how well that CGI holds up.
Yeah, probably it won't hold up too well. I mean, it's not, for TV, for a TV budget, it's pretty impressive for now. But it'll look like.
It did feel like it was a good mix of high tension, horror, and sci-fi. It felt very much like something you would see on the big screen when they were in that cave and people were getting sucked in, and then you hear the screams and everything. And actors did a great job to explain how terrifying it was. But it's just funny how we get that, and also in the same episode as like Jordan beating up a guy who's on XK.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But those scenes in the cave were, and Chrissy's like wish to go on that journey and try to expose Allie for more. It yeah, I mean, it definitely did a good job of playing up the tension and also just how, speaking of Anderson and Allie, and how when they were in the, I guess, alternate, I'll say the Bizarro universe, how Anderson was taking credit for what the Prom Anderson did as far as taking out their version of Clark. He's like, yeah, I did it. So it's just that was kind of like, wait a minute, so how are you taking credit for something that happened in another universe because you weren't there, or so I just whenever that the Bizarro Anderson meets the Prime Anderson, and they combine to become like Super Anderson, this is very dangerous. I think it's like Allie 2.0, but on XK, which is a very dangerous vote for Clark.
Right.
Yeah.
We also what?
Oh, go ahead.
We also had the Langs. Lana is still running for mayor and needs some help, and her ex kind of steps in and asks some hard questions. Again, it always surprises me how it doesn't feel like the Lang should be its own show. I think the way they use that family is to kind of help ground the show.
Yeah.
And also just help have an anchor of Smallville, because Smallville needs to be a character in the show as much as any of the real characters, the town itself, because you have to care about the people who are in imminent danger just because of where Clark lives.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. First I was wondering how that whole sequence is going to play out, because I was kind of leery of it, to be honest, when they first started talking, and Kyle was like, well, how I can help you, and I was like, oh god, this is very CWE and very like here comes the melodrama.
Right.
But I think the way that they ended it, and how it became, what Lana was feeling, and how she, when she had that, when she basically told Kyle, like, why this is not going to, it's not going to be we're going to make this work someday. I mean, there's still a lot like you said, they're really grounding this and making it, we're not going to fix this in like a couple weeks kind of thing. That sequence actually played out very well. And then I couldn't help but start thinking about Jordan and Sarah and Aubrey. And how, Sarah asking Jordan to be like, oh, it's so, it was nothing. Come hang out with me and the girl that I kissed.
Yeah.
And not because of the same sex stuff, but just like it could have been a guy. I mean, putting your significant other in a place where you are in the room with someone, even if it was just like an innocent fling. Well, there's no such thing innocent fling, even though it was just a kiss.
Right.
But the betrayal of trust that they have, and just seeing how, and then seeing Kyle and his relationship, doing the same thing to Lana, and these relationship dynamics. I mean, it really, I mean, you're right. I mean, the purpose of that family, one of their purposes is to ground the super family.
Mm-hmm.
And the real world issues that people deal with, and I really felt for Jordan in that moment where it's just like, I mean, we probably had been, we've been in situations where, like, if you imagine like your partner or hanging out with like someone you cheated on with. I mean, Sarah didn't think about putting from Jordan's standpoint, putting him in that position.
No,
it was a very Cal, like, where Cal was like, also like how he's trying to, whenever a few weeks back when he was trying to convince Lana, like, yeah, I made a mistake. It was it was very, very similar types of dynamics going on there.
Right. It is similar, and I didn't think about that before. All I could think about is they're just getting primed for them to break up at the end of the season. That's it. But you make a strong case of how it's paralleling the father and the daughter, which makes me think, I wonder if by the end of the season, will Sarah just look back and say to herself, I'm exactly like my dad, and that's who I don't want to be because of how he treated my mom. It's just there is a lot of hypocrisy going on. But that's what makes the emotional drama occur. And it's also Jordan, who he doesn't want to go on that date, but he honestly had a reason to. And it goes back to something Nat brought up at the beginning of the season of, like, you're keeping a secret from Sarah just as much as she is from you.
Yeah. Yep.
And him wanting to tell her the secret, but dude, you have to have at least 2 more relationships before you start letting that secret out of the
Yeah, we're not the flasher. We can't. Yeah, but
yeah.
because clearly Clark did not tell Lana back in the day. So I don't think Jordan should. You're only 15, man. Don't rush it.
Don't rush it. So I have to tell you, Will, like, last week, I know we went on some rants about some new shows we've been watching because it was kind of an off week.
Yeah.
This week, I don't know where I found it, but I did find time, and I found myself, you're going to laugh when I say this. I watched, I'm all caught up on the new show, The Endgame. I think it's on NBC.
Okay.
Yeah, with isn't it Maureen Bachner, who also executive produces the show. It's the show that they were like airing nonstop promos for like the first 2.5 months of this year. And only 5 episodes have dropped. If you watch the preview, you've seen the pilot episode. Okay. There is something about the show, and I think it's the actress who plays Val Turner, Ryan Michelle Bath. She holds the show, like Maureen, like she does her thing as Elena Fedorova or whatever. But I really think it's Ryan who is able to ground the show and make everything going around a bit more entertaining. I don't know. There's just something. She's the main character trying to figure it out. She's the proxy of the viewer, trying to put these pieces together of what the end game is that Elena has going on. Some of it's a bit predictable, but for whatever reason, it got me to watch 5 episodes. I don't know if I'm going to continue watching, or if it's going to be one of the shows where like I want to binge it. But it's fine. Like if you're the type of person who likes The Blacklist or any of these shows about, like you mentioned Hannibal Lecter earlier, about like the bad guy kind of playing that semi like in the gray, helping the police find people, then this would be a show that would be up your alley, because it plays into that, but it doesn't fully commit like that. There's other stuff going on. And it's more about the corruption in the government.
Got it. Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I'll try to check that out. I know my weekend watch is definitely going to be Atlanta season 3.
Oh
Finally, it's airing. And I think they're dropping the first 2 episodes tonight. So that's definitely on my watch list. For
I wasn't even bringing it up for you personally. I was just putting it out there for our listeners and just to give some other shows a new light. Yeah. I might try to check out The Cleaning Lady because I heard good things about it.
But I saw that one. I know it premiered, I think, back in January?
It already wrapped its first season.
Okay. I saw it. It was like I was kind of maybe as far as shows. But I was trying to. The one that I've been wanting to I've been seeing a lot of buzz about is Abbott Elementary.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Severance.
No.
Everyone is talking about Severance. And that is one that, and I have not heard of the show that you just mentioned. Makes sense.
It's like, it's on, I want to say it's on ABC. And I think it started a couple months ago, but it's I think a dramedy. So I definitely want to check it. I think I'm going to check it. I want to check that one out. And, and then of course, obviously we got, Moon Knight starting next week as well. Yep.
Yes.
So,
and unfortunately, we're gonna do what we did with Loki, and unfortunately, not have an episode drop next week.
Yeah. We're pulling the CW.
But hey, the last time we did this, we actually were able to have a great season of Loki to talk about. So
we did.
Double it up.
Yep, exactly. And everything I've been hearing about Moon Knight is it's definitely going to live up to the hype that everyone has been anticipating.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, on that note, my friend, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK on Twitter.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.snnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.